Obviously, because the big story is Tiger Woods. We're talking him next here on OTB AM, and here's the moment he won the Masters yesterday.
Many doubted we'd ever see it.
Remarkable story.
But here it is. The return to glory.
22 years on from the first green jacket comes the fifth. It's major number 15 for Tiger Woods.
Kind of just really hear it there, just the joy, can't you? It's just, people are just really happy for him. You can hear it.
Yeah, it went on as well. It went on for some time. I was obviously a human level. You're watching it, and he just didn't look like a guy who was going to let this slip, because everything was so perfect. He'd won obviously bad shots when he knew he could afford one dodgy shot on the 18th, but
Joe Molloy as well as in. I think he's have you gone to bed at all, Joe?
I'm going soon, I swear.
It's just I'd say you were so excited last night, nothing was going to send you into the cot.
Well, not just me, I mean everyone. It seems like a global story, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is a great story. Like it's a great story of redemption, but as I always do try to point out, like, I think the reason people love the story of redemption is the fact that he was very, very flawed and he did some really bad things. I just think it's always really important just to remember that as well. You know, he's not a perfect human being, and maybe that's why the outpouring of emotion was there.
I would imagine he is still very flawed. You know, he was pictured a couple of weeks ago arm in arm with Donald Trump. You know, in many respects, Tiger Woods is one of the great disappointments off the course of any icon. He's right up there in terms of disappointments as well. Like he's incredibly flawed. And we did an interview with Armin Kettyman, who wrote a brilliant book about him in the last year. You know, and in some respects, what is more horrible about Woods in that book is not the scandal and the more salacious headline-grabbing stuff. It's just his general way with people. Is shockingly rude on a routine level, or was anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of person he is now, and there are certainly genuine hints that he has softened and mellowed and gained a sense of perspective, and maybe being a father does that, and maybe essentially spending 2 to 3 years lying on your back, unable to move, looking at how you've messed up your life in many respects, maybe that gives you a pretty good sense of perspective as well. So there are hints that he's a softer, more refined human being, but certainly for the bulk of his career, he was rude. You know, I can give you one story from that book which just illustrates it as an example of what I'm talking about. It's so small, but it's indicative of an attitude. And it was at Augusta. He stayed in the same house for years and years and years. Mark O'Meara rented it. Tiger was friendly with O'Meara. And the year O'Meara won the Masters, they were all very excited. They ran back to the house to get changed because they wanted to go back out to Augusta for the party, you know. And Mark O'Meara's wife was next door. They'd gotten to know the neighbours the O'Mearas had around the area, and she was inside next door having a glass of champagne. Mark was getting changed upstairs in the rented house. He said to Tiger, "Go next door, will you, and just check what time we have to leave at." And Woods went next door, and he asked O'Meara's wife, you know, "Mark wants to know what time we have to leave." Grand. And there was a woman there who stood up and said, "Tiger, hi. It's actually lovely to meet you. It's my house that you guys have been staying in all these years." And Tiger looked over at her, said nothing in front of a lot of people, looked back at Mark O'Meara's wife and said, "I'm going to wait next door," or words to that effect. And the woman is like...
But he's a weirdo, Joe, in many ways, isn't he? I mean, if you look at his background and his upbringing, it's probably not surprising that he's a little bit different.
I think like everybody's a product of their environment in so many respects, you know.
You had a great upbringing, didn't you? Look at him now.
Look at me there.
Look at him there, so genial and smiley first thing of the morning. You know, that's a sign of real good rearing, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, actually, speaking of journalism, that ESPN piece that I referenced, if nobody's read it, it might take you about an hour. I think you probably know the piece I'm talking about. Just his fascination with the army, and with all that like regimental upbringing that he had, and his relation with his father.
Life of Tiger, was it?
Really interesting. Yeah, it's really fascinating, Joe, and I guess he's just a very flawed human being.
He is, and you know, part of it's our fault as well, because why do we trust such fame and money and fortune in somebody who can hit a little white golf ball around a big field? You know, even the most well-adjusted person, I think, would have struggled with becoming an icon at the age of 21.
I remember
and being
actually that
incredibly
interview
famous
you were
before
talking about there, Joe. I was actually driving in the car coming up from Limerick. I was actually listening to you speak to that author, and I don't like Tiger Woods. I'll say that out. I admire what he's achieved, and after listening to that interview, I really didn't like him. He just came across like such a horrible person.
Now, the one thing I would say to that, and I said it to the author on the night, I said the one problem with that book is that there was virtually no positive testimony from anybody about Woods. Now, nobody is all bad. And I think in Woods' defence, that book, he could argue, was just... Hatchet Job was too strong because it was well-researched and he spoke to lots of good people. But there was nothing good. Like, I don't believe that Woods is just a thoroughly bad person. I said flawed, and he certainly is flawed. But we never saw any of the good stuff. And he does have friends, and he does have people who love him, and he does seem to have a great relationship with his children. So, look, and like on the multiple affairs, he was a...
No laughing matter, Joe.
He was a lost person.
Yeah.
Like, that was... when you read about what he was doing, it was beyond grim. That was a destroyed soul. He was lost. His life was out of control. Like, he wasn't happy. These were not fun encounters by the sounds of things. So, it's a complicated picture. It's one of the reasons he's fascinating.
Can I just bring you up that you made the point about Donald Trump there, and before you came on, Gary Breen was extolling what Raheem Sterling has done in terms of racism and that. And Tiger Woods is in a position where he could have a major say in this kind of, not for want of a better word, debate. Yes, he's friendly with the racist that is Donald Trump. Yeah,
I know. It's difficult to square in many respects because you wouldn't think he needs to be. It's another, if you were to build the case against Tiger Woods, it's certainly another point you could put into the argument. I do feel like this conversation's gone off an incredibly negative light, considering what's just happened.
But we've 99% of happiness, so it's good to get a different voice.
It's good actually, to actually discuss the man that he is and the fact that he's had this massive redemptive...
I'm 99% happy. I don't want to come on here and just hatchet job him either, because what he has done is extraordinary. Yes, he's flawed in so many ways.
But that's why it's such a great story, is because he is flawed and because he gives us something to talk about. He's not vanilla. He's not just there. We actually have stuff to talk about. And for so long, this was kept hidden. And it's just, I don't like the man, but he's an interesting man. But I mean, to go away from the personality and look at the golf as such, it must be really exciting as a golf fan to see somebody who everybody would have thought, that's it, he's gone, washed up. And all of a sudden he's back, even despite all his flaws, with a huge sprinkling of star power.
Well, you see, that's why, honestly, that is why it's an amazing story. It's because what he's done here is a contender for the greatest sporting comeback of all time. Genuinely. I mean, I can't think of a more improbable comeback that I've seen in my lifetime. People have mentioned Ben Hogan a good few times, and people have mentioned Nicky Lauda. Now, I was saying to Mick Foley at the Sunday Times last night, if you separate their proximity to death, which I admit is a factor, Hogan in a car crash and destroyed his bones, and Nicky Lauda's face, obviously, and other injuries, their recoveries were more straightforward. Ben Hogan was winning a US Open, admittedly in pain, but within a year he was winning the US Open. He was at the peak of his powers, bones mend. It wasn't straightforward, I'm not saying that. It was remarkable, and you hate to talk down other great achievements. But he was winning a US Open within a year. Nicky Lauda, how he got back in a car again, I don't know. It's one of the great displays of nerve any of us will ever see in sport. But Woods was destroyed. He had 3 back surgeries in the space of 19 months. He had 4 knee surgeries around that period as well, a little bit before, but 3 back surgeries in 19 months. They had given up. The spinal fusion, which he ultimately had, his 4th surgery, was as much about quality of life as it was about playing golf again. He just wanted to be able to kick a football around with his daughter and play with his children. He was at a Champions dinner in 2017, and he said it was either Faldo or Jack Nicklaus. I've seen various reports, maybe both of them. But he said to them, I'm done. Like, I'm wrapping this thing up. It's just not meant to be. It's over. And he went for the spinal fusion. He flew to London the next day. He had the surgery, and he also had the chipping yips. I mean, there's one thing physically, he was ruined. I mean, ruined. He couldn't get out of a chair. He couldn't walk. But then on his many, many comebacks, on occasion, he had the chipping yips. There are stories of the players in the locker room watching Woods on the day where he couldn't chip, where it was duff chip after duff chip. And they turned off the television in the clubhouse. One, because no pro wants to be anywhere near a duff, and just having it in your consciousness is almost a taboo. But 2, because they thought it was sad that Tiger Woods was reduced to the chip and yips and under the full glare of the world. So he had to rebuild his entire game from scratch. So most players, if they get the chip and yips, you just don't come back from it because the scar tissue is there. It's hard to forget the chip and yips when you're at Augusta and you've got to chip on 18 or you've got to do something under pressure. So he rebuilt his entire game with these physical limitations. Plus, the field of 2019 destroys the field of 2002 when Woods was in his pomp. So much deeper, so much more talent. Players can hit the ball so much further. And Woods is 43 years of age. And yesterday he beat Brooks Koepka, who's won 3 majors in the last 16 months, and Molinari, the foreign player in the world, the Open champion, the 2 best players in the world at the moment, arguably in major terms. He beat them on a Sunday with, I mean, the way he played the course was just phenomenal. But you put all that together, and there's been comeback after comeback. Like Woods has just done so many interviews from a car park as he gets into his car, hobbles into his car after withdrawing from a tournament, saying, look, I don't know. I'm gonna see what happens. It's just I can't turn. You know, when you add all that up and you consider he's 43 and you consider he hasn't won a major in 11 years, I just don't think I can't imagine genuinely ever seeing a more unlikely or wonderful comeback. And his emotions on 18 were just of a different person. You know, and we've talked about the flaws, but you saw someone there, I think, humbled by the scandal. I think humbled by how destroyed his body was. He had the perspective of a father. The emotion with his children is just, I mean, Woods kept that off limits. You know, don't show people you're a human being. Don't, like, we are just, this is business. Get in the clubhouse. But it was like an explosion of relief and ecstasy and disbelief. And, you know, it was amazing on Saturday when he finished his round and he walked to the clubhouse and the entire gallery had lined the route back to the clubhouse. And Woods, back in the day, would have 1,000-yard stare, all business. I'm not even going to acknowledge it. He was like beaming the whole way back. It was like a mini victory tour. And honestly, one of my interpretations of that is when he was 21, 22, he was inevitably a bit of a brat and took all the adulation for granted. Like, if I'm Tiger Woods, of course, yeah, get away from me, Joe Public. Whereas almost when you go through what he's gone through away from the course, and when you do some of the things he has done, and people still accommodate that and accept that and overlook some of that and give you a second chance, I think he looks around and he values the love. I think he feels love. I think he's looking at this saying, this is actually miraculous in so many fronts, including the fact that you guys, even though you know what I've done, even though everyone knows it's the most horrible open scandal, you're behind me and you're hoping I do this. And you add all that in and it's layer upon layer of complexity and emotion and improbability. So
do you think he's finally let the wall down that people we now might be seeing? I'm not even saying the real Tiger Woods, because I think the Tiger Woods may have changed from that Tiger Woods we've read about in the book, and the guy in his 20s who was just so rude to people, whereas maybe through therapy and all the psychological work he's had to do, and the fact that he's been so humbled just by physical injury, and quite rightly you said he wasn't near death's door, but you know, it could have gone that way, especially with the painkillers and things like that. It could be a very, very slippery slope, so maybe he's really had to learn the hard way. But has he learnt?
I don't know. That's the interesting question. I don't know. You would like to think so. Are we seeing all of Tiger? We're seeing 15% maybe of Tiger, which is a lot more than we used to. You would hope so. It would be something miraculous if he was unchanged completely, given everything he's gone through. But none of us know, you know, that is the intriguing thing, and maybe there'll be another book in 10 years and you'll get the truth. But he looks to have, like, he really does look to have mellowed and softened. I'd be very surprised if he's exactly the same person. But as to what he's like day to day, 90% of the time, we can't be quite sure. So I don't want to come on here and say, you know, it's a complete redemption and he's a changed person as well, because that would be too convenient. But certainly what he's done in golfing terms is the ultimate redemption.
But like, even in human terms, when you look back, we're not the same people we were at 22, and our lives were nowhere near as interesting as Tiger Woods.
Yeah, I mean, if Johnny Ward was the same person he was at 22, Lord knows.
You've been the Roisin dove dancing away.
I think it's actually sad to say I really haven't changed much at all, and that is my failure.
Sorry, Johnny was the exception that proves the rule. Some people can just keep on. Can I just briefly, because I know you're probably going to wrap up, if people didn't see the golf yesterday, it was amazingly exciting. And there were various, at one stage there was a 5-way tie for the lead, so he wasn't given this tournament, even though Molinari made those mistakes. There were lots of striking aspects of his play, but above everything, if you want to just watch this tournament in 2 minutes, you could just watch the 12th hole, which is that famous par 3 over water, where of the two front groups, the two leading groups of 3, 4 players went into the water. They took on the pin. Molinari, like the guy who never makes mistakes, Molinari took on the pin. Brooks Koepka, before that, had a double bogey. He went into the water. And Woods, using all of his experience, and he did it a few times across the front 9, where there were just, Augusta's so clever in so many ways. There were just pins that you can't go near. You just don't take on. And he saw them a mile away. He knew the spots, knew where not to go. And on 12, Peter Allis on commentary was saying, they've always said on 12, just split the bunker. It doesn't matter where you are in the tournament. It doesn't matter where the pin is. Go over that middle bunker. And Molinari went right. He tried to go at the pin a bit. Koepka tried to go at the pin. Fina tried to go at the pin. They seemed to clean enough shots, but the gusts of wind, the magic that happens there, they ended up in the water. And Woods, just steely, surgical, didn't even look at the pin, just ignored it and on the green. And that changed the whole momentum of the tournament. And look, throughout, some of his iron play was exceptional. He found more fairways than he has in a long time. And people said he couldn't putt, that had gone and that Mother Time had taken that from him. And he's not what he was, but he's not what he was in any respect. And he still put it incredibly well under pressure. His lag put on 9 was extraordinary. So surgically, he took the course apart and was about as comfortable as you could hope to be on an Augusta Sunday. And it was just down to experience. And now, it was a really remarkable display. And we've got 3 majors in the next 3 months, including a Portrush. If you're a golf fan, you really have to try and get up to see this guy at Portrush. So
we've got your gifts coming up on screen there as well, Joe. I don't know if you can see them. We've got Leo DiCaprio giving a good clap as well, and all Joe's emotions on Joe's timeline are popping up there. Oh, there's Oprah. Oh God, were you feeling totes emotion, Joe, at the end of that yesterday afternoon?
When he's there with his family and he's behaving in a way I've never seen him behave, it actually hinted at someone who has gone through a lot. That's why I felt, if I felt something, it's not that I was looking at him saying, this guy's just a great guy. I'm just glad he's won. He's just a solid, great, sweet guy. It wasn't that. It was, look at the outburst. He has gone through some really bad times.
Joe's going to get emotional here himself. Joe's going to break down here.
I'm going to let Joe go now. He can put on his Masters onesie, go back into your Tiger Woods duvet and just get yourself some sleep, because you have a big week coming up now of talking about this.
Just to reassure people, tonight is not going to be 7 to 10 p.m. of Tiger Woods.
I don't know about that.
No, we won't.
I think out of all of JP's best intentions, that may still happen. Joe Molloy, go back to bed. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Bye.